The second obsession is an obsession with constructing a state that is stronger, more capable, less corrupt, and more people-centered and developmental. And the third obsession I always make is national obsession with improving the quality of public education and training. Because I think part of what undermines everything else that we're doing are the poor education outcomes in our country. And it's something that, and if you look at the level of investment that we're making as a country in education and counterposing it with the outcomes, it is a serious problem. And in order to achieve this, we do need to build a broad alliance across society. And that's why I think it is not just imagination that many people are talking about establishing a broad front. Bringing civil society, bringing different sectors of society, the labor movement and everybody else in one platform, of course including government for that matter, in one platform to begin to engage with some of the challenges that we face. I'm being told to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mcebisi Jonas, for highlighting the state of our economy and what needs to be done, beginning by saying that we, at a defining moment in this country, both politically and economically, noting that we are increasingly becoming the capital of corruption and of state capture, and then emphasizing that we need to bring back the idea of people being at the center of our transformation project, that the current politics is one that seeks to deinstitutionalize and weaken the state, that we need a new consensus around how to build our economy, that we have a crisis of leadership, we need to be dealing with that through building a broad alliance, and that we need to go back to having a developmental state rather than a captured state. Our discussant of the two inputs for today is Mr. Mondi. You have the floor.
Good afternoon to the university management, academics, Pravin Gordhan and Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here as a discussant. I think it's very important for me as an academic to really highlight our interest since the state capture as well as the future of democratic governance was highlighted by the former public protector in October 2016. That, in fact, stimulated quite a lot of interest among many of us in the academia, partly because we thought that we could play a bigger role in providing a conceptual framework to help and make sense of what was described in the report, and what we describe now report is a sudden coup. Secondly, to collate vast amounts of data to show South Africans through our inquiry and our capability as knowledge workers that what is in the state capture can be shown empirically through the support of various players in our society, from the media that's sitting in front of me here, but also to those South Africans who work in these state institutions, who are prepared to defend the gains of 1994 and the promise of President Mandela, who fought for freedom and was prepared to lay his life for the freedom of many South Africans, and many of us here were able to stand and speak in front of you. So, as a group, our group is called State Capacity Research Group. It's composed of many compatriots, some of whom in the academia fought side by side as intellectuals in the dark days of apartheid, and were quite attracted and disappointed by the development country and what the state capture report of the public protector had to say. So in this work, we are very much at the outset, PG and MJ, we are very much excited by the fact that what you've articulated we are excited by the fact that you've both argued strongly that there needs to be a transformation of this economy, that this economy requires that. So we like that. Secondly, also, in our report, in our collaboration with all the universities, this university, University of Stellenbosch, University of Cape Town, the University of the Witwatersrand, as well as the Paarl Institute, we're all able to develop this report where we're arguing that one of the interesting facts about the Zuma presidency is really the repurposing of the state for private accumulation in the form of what you call a shadow state. That is articulated in various kitchen cabinets that are contained by various players. At the center of it, as we argue in our report, is really the critical role that the current Minister of Finance played in that process. Firstly, by granting citizenship to the Gupta family, but more importantly, by ensuring that our state-owned enterprises, when he was the Minister of Public Enterprises, ensured that the boards, as well as some of the management, is changed to try and address and position that shadow state to try and take as much of the public assets that are supposed to be going to the economy to benefit the majority of South Africans in pursuit of the promise of 1994. This we show very, very strongly about how those facilitators, those men and women who were moving in places with envelopes and ensuring that they could convince those that were tendering in our procurement systems for trains at Transnet, but also in the coal tenders that, that my colleagues have spoken about, but also in how they try to change the rules to suit the shadow state. What we argue very strongly is that where the state has been repurposed is really a silent coup, because clearly when the General Secretary of the ANC sees a list that says the Minister of Finance is removed because I have proof, an intelligence proof, that he is working for the other side. And therefore, here is a name for the the new Minister of Finance. When Mr. Mantashe says, we don't know where that list comes from, we didn't know where the name comes from, it indicates to us that really our argument around the shadow state has got some support, because we expect that somebody in the top 6 who was consulted will have defended the position of recalling our former Minister of Finance here. But also Mr. Mapaile has on record, through an affidavit, said, you know, the evidence put across doesn't support that. So as academics, we're trying to show through those individuals and the support that state capture is not a fiction of phantom. What Amapungane have put on the table, what a number of the SOE employees have paid a price for by losing their job. It's not a story. What the Gupta leaks every day are telling us, it is not a phantom, it is real. our country is being stolen. There is a silent coup that is taking place. So, what is to be done? Very importantly, firstly, we need to also understand how this whole process arose. I think Mr. Jonas has put across the thesis around a developmental state. It is exactly that developmental state, as well as centering our economic development on the importance and pivotal role of state-owned enterprises, as well as BEE and other formation under the name of radical economic transformation, that the repurposing and therefore the looting of our state resources was being used. So therefore, I caution Mr. Jonas that the radical economic transformation rhetoric, if there is no change, dynamic change, particularly in the leadership and in who controls the levers of power, away from the shadow state into a constitutional state, which many of us so much believe in, that radical economic transformation program, as well as the developmental state program, will be nothing but a continuation of rent seekers who will continue and strengthen the position of the state at the expense of our people who remain marginalized 23 years after our liberation. In the report, we show various institutions how this looting has taken place. I think of importance is that the recent developments show how desperate the shadow state is in terms of the new minerals, in terms of the what we call mining charter 3, which is the subject of a court case between business as well as the state, at the expense of the communities and the workers that are working in those mines, as we've seen in the case of Bakoni that's taking place at the moment. So what we're saying in our report is that, very importantly, there is a need for a new economic consensus. We're saying that this economic consensus critically has to ensure that it brings to the table business, labor, and civil society. And in that regard, it can never be led by the political actors, or what you argue is that the political actors that will replace Zuma in the new economic consensus must commit to realizing the vision of economic consensus within the framework of the Constitution, as well with due regard to the Public Finance Management Act, as well as ensuring that the transformation is perfectly compatible with the Constitution. So anything that's being done outside the Constitution, we argue that it's not in line with the promise of 1994 and the commitment of redress, of bringing black people in particular to the center of the economy, ensuring that those of you here have got access to the doors of learning and education without you having to go on strike because your government is being repurposed and therefore acting as a shadow state to fulfill an interest of the few, not an interest of the majority. What is clear is that state capture by shadow elites has profound implication for state institutions. It destroys public trust in the state and its organs. I'm sure a lot of you have got views about the state already and the organs, that you know what, if I need an IT, going to the Home Affairs Department, I'm going to have to pay someone to get in front of the queue. I won't go there. Or if you're lucky enough to have access to a computer, maybe you can do it online. But how many South Africans have got computers? Secondly, it weakens key economic agencies that are tasked with delivering development outcomes. We have seen what has happened to PRASA, which is critical for many South Africans that use commuter transport to and from work. Thirdly, it erodes confidence in the economy. I think the former Minister of Finance stated very clearly that we're in a recession, unemployment is worse than ever, around 28%. Inequality is we're the worst unequal middle-income country, and poverty continues in this country. So when there is no trust in public institutions, there is very little goodwill to express solidarity through tax. Large companies are predisposed to sit on cash, as we have seen with many of them over 600 billion rand in cash, rather than investing it towards productive use. Criminality proliferates, exploiting weaknesses in intelligence and crime enforcement authorities. We know ours already have been captured. The fact that we have continuous leaks in the Gupta leaks, and not even one has been questioned, reinforces the point that there is a lot of weaknesses around our prosecution capability. The majority of South Africans will bear the brunt of these corrosive developments. Worryingly, large-scale corruption enables much wider corruption. Under such conditions, it is impossible to achieve transformation objectives that could improve the livelihoods of the majority of South Africans. Therefore, for us as South Africans, as academics ourselves, we can only make a contribution towards the inquiry. We can make a contribution to a debate. But what is very important for all of you here is to understand that there's been a silent coup.
All right, well, those were live visuals from the University of Johannesburg, where former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and his former Deputy Mcebisi Jonas were holding a small seminar on state capture as well as radical economic transformation, while the guns came out blazing against current Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba for his alleged role of illegal naturalization of some members of the Gupta family. And they said those who were tendering for the different state-owned entities have brought this country to its knees. They also lashed out at the so-called shadow state, saying that state capture is not a myth, and those that have alluded to state capture have lost their jobs. Solutions were that we need a developmental state where government has a totally transparent role in their radical economic transformation bid, and that the power needs to be given to those that are not tainted by any of the allegations of wanting to further their personal enrichments instead of the people. They said this needs to happen within the confines, of course, of the Constitution, and the allegations of state capture have destabilized the country's credibility, has eroded economic confidence, inequalities at its highest in the country, and poverty and unemployment figures that are constantly rising. Well, let's break for a couple of minutes now. I'm back with more news on top of the hour.
What guides us? Is it something you can see?
We need deliverance from sin, because God never
Hear?
carry on working to spread the message
Feel?
to the whole world.
or touch? What leads us onto greater experiences? Is it the words of our sacred texts? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say. What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into Black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the Black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
It is 5 p.m. across all Central Africa regions, and this is the final half-hour countdown of the day's top news, business, and even sporting updates. We're still live to you from SABC studios here in Auckland Park. I'm Alicia Jolly. Good afternoon, Audrey. Let's give them the leading news for now, please. ANC MP Dr. Mcebisi Jonas will appear before the NC's disciplinary committee in KwaZulu-Natal on the 10th of September. 6,000 jobs are on the line as the Bokoni Platinum Mine in Limpopo announces that it's planning to shut down. And hundreds of patients' lives may be at risk as almost 5,000 laboratory workers have downed tools across the country. ANC MP Dr. Mcebisi Jonas will appear before the NC's disciplinary committee in KwaZulu-Natal on the 10th of September. Jonas has been served with a charge sheet accusing her of bringing the party into disrepute. Now, this comes after she called for President Jacob Zuma to step down, and the ANC has welcomed the decision taken by its provincial structure to officially charge her. Khoza spoke out against her party and later called for the president's head. Now the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is taking action against her. The party accuses Dr. Khoza of bringing the party into disgrace.
She has contravened the constitution of the ANC, the policies of the ANC. So indeed, she'll have to appear before the disciplinary committee to answer those allegations.
Meanwhile, Khoza says she has received death threats after, among others, openly calling for Zuma to step down. But Parliament says it's waiting on her to indicate whether she is ready to accept the security arrangement that has been offered to her. But Khoza says she will have to consult with security experts before accepting that police protection.
Right now, as we speak, I'm being charged, and there is a campaign that is being run by the Deputy Minister of Police. Then I'm a member of DA, and I'm going to be joining the DA. And all these sectors are all together. I cannot simply walk